Cost-cutting, retrenchments and hiring freezes. There wasn't much to cheer about for employees in 2012 as companies battled a slowing economy and dented sentiments, tightening their purse strings. But as we usher in a new year, will things change for the better? What's the outlook for hiring in 2013 and which sectors are looking the hottest? That's our first discussion tonight on We Mean Business. And joining in on the show with their expert views, Sangeeta Lala, Senior Vice President and co-founder TeamLease Services, joins us from our Bangalore studios. Shiv Agarwal, MD at ABC Consultants, joins us on a link from New Delhi. And Amrish Raghuvanshi, the Group President, Finance and CFO at InfoEdge, which promotes Naukri.com, also joins in from the capital. Let's begin the discussion, in fact, with Sangeeta. Why don't you really recap for us how 2012 was for employees before we go on and discuss how 2013 would be. Not a great year at all for employees.
Hi, thanks so much. Yes, absolutely, not a great year for job seekers, especially not so much for the organizations. But what happened was that if we sort of break up the whole hiring scenario, typically there's the whole junior, low-end, startup, fresher hiring that happens, and then there's obviously the mid and the senior that goes on as regular part of business expansion. Now, what we saw was that the rate of growth in business really did not happen in 2012 on the negative side, which affected the junior levels to a large extent in terms of campus hiring going on at an all-time low. And also for the junior level, the hiring was extremely, it was volume driven, but it was extremely selective. It was extremely driven by the kind of quality and the service level requirement that the business required. So that was one story in terms of the new fresh lot or coming into the job scenario. At the mid and the senior level also, what we saw was that there was hiring which was on, but extremely muted in the sense that typically hiring timelines took a lot longer to close. The negotiations were extremely tough when it came to the final offer table, and a lot of organizations also merged a lot of roles for their senior mandates. So typically if you had somebody who was doing, say, an operations and a project infra role, in earlier days we would have two people managing such a role, but we saw that last year companies actually went about merging a lot of roles. I think it was more from a view of cost cutting, of saying that the productivity had to be questioned. So with all of that, we saw an overall drop. And it obviously affected the candidates to a large extent. Candidates became cautious and they negotiated even harder so that they make the right decisions.
Right. Amrish, what were some of the bright spots in 2012 before we get to our discussion in 2013? Any sectors, any particular areas which did well in what was definitely not a great year as far as the economy was concerned?
No, I think across the board, most sectors were fairly weak on hiring sentiment. So there was not really, great news in any. The only sort of good thing was that most of the slowdown was sort of gradual and linear. So it wasn't like, 2008 when everything froze all at one go. So, I think companies took some time to adjust to it. And I think, most, employees were lucky because they managed to get wage increments in April or May before the slowdown really came upon us. So, I think 2013 will be probably a little tougher on that respect. So the only sort of positive from an employee perspective was that 2012 they managed to get wage increments, which will probably be a little more difficult in 2013.
Right. In fact, TeamLease has come out with a survey.
And, like IT services.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Amrish.
No, I was just saying that IT is, a big sort of bellwether for what happens, at least in the service industries, because it affects not just IT companies, which is a very large ecosystem in India, but it has a cascading effect on several other service industries where they tap into talent from or people shift to other industries. And that was fairly weak through most of 2012.
Right. I want to come back to all of those sector-specific, trends that we've been seeing. But Shiv, what's your outlook for 2013? TeamLease, of course, has come out with a survey, so I want to get Sangeeta in as well. But, is it going to be a tad bit better? Is it going to be significantly better? Is it going to be pretty much the same as 2012 probably was?
It's unpredictable completely at the moment. I think what is predictable is that nothing is going to improve in the next 3 or 4 months. There is some talk, as there has been right through the last year or so, about sentiment improving perhaps in a quarter or 2 quarters from now, maybe because of some of the work the government did a few months ago. But to be very honest, I think it's unpredictable, gloomy. There's really no, I don't see any great silver lining in the hiring outlook, certainly for the next 3 to 6 months. We all hope things will look up after that.
Sangeeta, in fact, that's what the TeamLease IIJT report also says. For your FY13 Q1, you're not sounding very bullish, but give us a sense of some of the key findings that you have over there and what the outlook is for the entire year as well.
Sure. To start off with, I think Jan, Feb, March, the first quarter of the calendar year is generally a slow quarter across the level, whether it's a good year or a downturn. It's always been seen that this is a time when companies are either have just started planning for the next year if they're following a calendar year, or they are getting ready for the whole appraisal and the whole performance feedback process. So it's generally a slow year. But if I compare it to say a 2010, 11, that year when it was slightly better, its jobs are definitely lower by at least about 10 to 15% than what it was 2 years at the same time ago. But in spite of that, I think one of the things that we see is that there are 2-3 sectors which still seem to be stable in terms of hiring, which are really the large volume sectors like retail, FMCG, consumer, and which is a good thing, because these are the sectors which are frankly those so-called sunrise, which give jobs to the larger majority of the population or the freshers passing out. So that has stayed constant, though we heard IT is low and it continues to be quite pessimistic. ITS is also not looking great as per our study, and even infrastructure for that matter. We were very bullish on infrastructure mid last year, because infra, real estate was one sector where we actually saw a lot of market growth, projects starting or coming to an end. But I think now is a phase when the set of new projects or rollouts, whether it's a commercial, residential project, infrastructure has not really happened. The planning has not yet happened. So I think that sector also looks to be down for at least a quarter. I think overall, I think for the year it will be pretty much similar, though one of the major sectors which has really tanked since the last year and a half has been BFSI. I mean, the entire financial and banks and financial services has gone at an all-time low, and that frankly speaks a lot for how the economy is doing overall. So we are hoping that by June, July, BFSI picks up by some margin, because then that will sort of give a sort of a flag off whether the other industries can really follow or not. So that's something which we are really crossing our fingers and hoping that at some stage that deadlock sort of opens up for BFSI and starts hiring.
In fact, Shiv, I want to pick up on BFSI, with the equity markets rallying. You also have the divestment agenda back on the forefront. You have IPOs making a comeback. Is all of that, really going to sort of help the sector change in terms of the hiring outlook?
Nikhil, not in the immediate short term. I think there has still been some excess staff, which I think will take up some of the new work that comes in. But certainly, I think if the bull run continues and we do see, more divestments, more IPOs, I think yes, I see certainly parts of the BFSI story looking up. But I agree with Sangeeta that it's been a pretty terrible time for that sector over the last 18 months. And as we speak right now, looks like this is going to continue for a while also with them.
And Shiv, what about retail, the recent sort of set of reforms that have been announced on FDI and so on, are you optimistic? Is that going to give a fillip? I read a report somewhere which said a 25% uptick in retail hiring in this year itself.
So it's a difficult one to say. I think obviously there is a lot of wait and watch still. There's still, companies are not 100% clear of what's going to happen, and hence people aren't going to invest in any serious level of hiring right now. So I think retail could be a sector in 3 months' time, assuming at the policy level everything is okay. I think that will be a silver lining in the hiring space over the next, like I said, I think from calendar Q2, Q3, retail will look good. We aren't seeing a big uptake at the moment in the retail space.
All right, in fact, I want to come to all of those policy measures that need to be taken to give a fillip to hiring. But Ambrish, talking about retail, do we have a sufficient talent pool to really work in retail back end, or is talent crunch going to be the next challenge as far as 2013 is concerned?
No, I think that's a really good point, because if you look at the, we've been discussing so far about the demand scenario, which is determined by GDP growth or business confidence or global factors or global confidence levels and investment spending in India. But, flipping to the other side, which is your question, which is about the supply side dynamics. And, frankly, on the supply side, not much has changed. The real, sort of test is that when you ask Indian businesses that what are their top 3 concerns. So today, if you ask them, hiring or retaining staff would probably not rank among the top 3. They would be worried about growth, or they would be worried about high interest rates, or they'd be worried about input prices and so on. But when India is growing fast, among the top 3 concerns is definitely the talent crunch. And I think, cutting across sectors, that is a story which continues to play out. So whether it is in retailing that we don't have the depth of talent, so when retail needs people with some skills and with some experience, they go to hospitality, or they, try and tap into other industries which are related in some form. But clearly we have, a problem in skills in infrastructure, we have a problem with skills in retailing, so several sectors. And if there is a turnaround from a demand perspective, you will suddenly see a huge talent crunch.
All right. Sangeeta, I want to come to you for some of the sort of battered industries that have been in news for all the wrong reasons in 2013. But before that, just picking up on the point that Ambrish made, engineering, construction, these are sectors that have not been doing well. Like he said, talent crunch seems to be the sort of biggest, stymieing factor of growth over here. L&T complains, BHEL complains that there's not enough talent. Is that going to change this? I mean, is the sort of lack of options maybe in other sectors going to make, job seekers go on the field, go on the ground in these sectors?
I think there's definitely the good thing out of this is that everybody realizes that there is a skill crunch, so to speak. There's no shortage of bodies out there, but clearly, we do placements where we pick up people from MBA colleges who have studied English in their mother tongue. So that's the classic problem, and I think that's what most business leaders are probably worrying about today in saying that how do I have the right staff which is customer facing for me. So I think the first and foremost is that all of us know the problem. The second thing is that in some scope, in some areas, what has happened is that there's been a lot of private ownership or enterprise which has gone out and started working to getting this as a backward integrated effort to skill up people. Obviously, we cannot go back to the school days in saying that, okay, how do I do the repair right at the school level? We can't do that. It's too late for that, and that needs a complete policy change to it. But I think what a lot of private owners have done, or corporate India has done, is that they're looking at different medium in saying, how do I focus on giving a vocational training? How do I sort of do a public-private partnership with the government or with certain vocational training training institutes and saying that, okay, I'm going to hire people from the tier 2, tier 3, and then how do I scale them up? So if you see, a lot of the retail corporates have actually done tie-ups with, a lot of the BFSI people have actually done tie-ups with institutes and academies and saying that, okay, I'm going to hire you guys, but I will leverage your, your basic education content with the whole customer-facing sort of thing. So I think in some way it's kind of scattered today. It's disintegrated, which whatever works for whatever industry. But there's some work which has started, but it's a much bigger problem than what we are saying today. I mean, we are probably talking of a last mile repair, right, but there has to be a lot of investment which has to happen at the current school education level, which is required, I think. Otherwise, right, the effects of it, this is really going to come out in the next decade to come.
Right, Shiv, I want to talk about some of the geographies. The TeamLease report says Bangalore was the worst affected in 2012. What are some of the geographies that you would be watching out for as far as 2013 is concerned? Also, how are tier 2, tier 3 cities, say like Nagpur, Indore, Jaipur, how are they likely to score as far as hiring is concerned and as compared to the 4 metros?
So I think geography is a slightly difficult one. I think the Bangalore story is obviously linked to what happened in technology in the last 1 year. But if we say that sectors like the consumer sector or perhaps the healthcare or pharmaceutical sector are going to look okay, traditionally these have been fairly perhaps north and west centric sectors, and probably they will continue to grow. I think tier 2 cities, we haven't seen a huge jump in them. I think there was a lot of talk about tier 2 and tier 3 cities a few years ago and what would happen there, and that would be the next big employment generators. We haven't seen that to that degree, purely because frankly the skills don't exist there as yet. The perpetual issue of employability that we face is even more apparent in tier 2 cities where language is a barrier, and just sheer experience is a barrier there. So I think it's a longer term issue. Every time there's a new industry that comes up, there will always be a talent crunch, because frankly we don't have those skills in India that exists. Also, I think over the last 10-15 years, India has grown faster than the talent has grown. So the talent is, in a way, needs to catch up from a skill perspective with the growth of the industry at large.
Amrish, what's been the online experience? Which of the geographies generating the most interest, and also where are companies hiring the most?
No, so I would echo the same points made by Shiv, that essentially the slowdown has been most in Bangalore, of course, for obvious reasons. But in every other market also there has been a slowdown. I mean, there's been a considerable sort of deceleration, and certain industries like telecom, which are very sort of Bombay centric, have obviously been affected more than most other industries for, again, very well known reasons. And the outlook, I would echo that point that tier 2 and tier 3 cities are not really that big employment magnets just as yet. So, because a lot of the industries in these cities like that is related to, manufacturing, and manufacturing has been weak because of high interest rates and low demand and so on. So the real essential thing is that hiring is a lagging indicator to economic growth. You don't normally see hiring pick up in big numbers until the growth has really set in. So unless businesses get some clarity and they get see a runway of growth ahead, they're not going to hire in big numbers. People will continue to be cautious. They will continue to take time over decision making when it comes to hiring.
Sangeeta, let's come to salaries, because what your report said was very interesting. You said just because a particular sector is seeing double-digit growth as far as hiring is concerned, that does not necessarily translate into double-digit salaries. So salaries will continue to remain muted.
Yes, yes. Actually, this links up to what Amrish said at the start of the show. It's true. I mean, I think unless one is an excellent top standing performer, the rest can forget any sort of double-digit increment for this year. That's the feel that we get from the market today. Whether even when they're hiring, clients and corporates are not willing to give the sort of hikes that one would expect if you're changing a job, and that stays even for existing employees. It's clearly going to be single-digit. It's going to be very far and few companies which are probably doing well, or they have to retain critical talent where they will look at the deviation. So higher increment is going to be an aberration this year. In fact, companies, the feel I get is that they'll probably, go back to employees and saying that, look, we will invest on you by the fact that you stay on the job. We invest in you by training you, and we give you a reasonably attractive variable component, so you earn your increment rather than take it as a given. So that's what is very clear today.
But do you have any sort of figure, any sort of overall percentage increase expected in salaries? Going to be single digit at the most? Higher single digit at the most?
I would say it would not. I mean, at an average for any reasonable performing industry, it would be 8-10%. If there are specific companies or large majors which are doing well, it might, or even for a great performer, it would probably be a 14 to 15%. But anything more than that seems tough. Or, I mean, you've got to have really niche talent to get anything above a 20% in today's day.
All right, so at par with inflation, so no real gains as far as salaries are concerned. But Shiv, do we see measures like an increase in, say, the variable components linked to performances that Sangeeta was measuring, bonus payouts being toned down, KRAs being more stringent, all of that coming into place now?
Absolutely, and I think effectively what that means is that pay will be cut, because pay is a combination of fixed and variable, and if business is not doing well, it's unlikely that variable pay increases. So what happens is, while I think we're lucky that there aren't a lot of companies actually cutting pay rather than giving increments, but even if that doesn't happen and if they increase variable pay, given the state of the economy in general, I suspect a lot of people will not make that variable pay, and hence effectively their total cash or total cost to company really goes down compared to the past there. So I think companies are saying we want to pay for performance rather than pay for just tenure and having spent another year in the company. I'm actually not as hopeful as Sangeeta to say that it would be 10% or 20%. I think the average to me will be between 0 and 5% on average, with people with specialist skills. And obviously, again, top performers will still make more than that always on fixed and variable. But the average performer or the average plus performer, to me, I think would be lucky if his compensation stays where it is this year.
Okay, that's not good news at all. I want to wrapping up comments here. But Amrish, first to you. So beyond all of those reform measures that the government has already taken, what are some of the other parameters, other policy measures that you need to take from the government side, especially to sort of increase the employment, to give a thrust on employment generation in the country?
So I think, the overall macro climate needs to improve, and certainly the signs are that it seems to be improving. In the last 2 years, we went into a funk, when it came to government decision making and, the overall business climate. And that looks like it's improving, and that's good news. But like I said, this is going to be a lagging indicator. It will take time. People will wait to see that, all right, the reform measures which have been announced, or the decision making which has been announced, actually speeds up, things at the ground level, and only then things will improve thereafter. So, and, just throwing my hat in the ring about, increments, I have, a slightly different perspective. I think companies are going to hedge their bets. They're going to take a little bit of time, and rather than doing it in April, they might delay to May, June, the decision about giving increments, so that they have slight more clarity about what's happening in the macro environment.
All right, Sangeeta, I want to end with you. Just a last word. Given that there's nothing much to lose, then at least as far as salaries is concerned, is it probably then a good idea to make a mid-career switch for those people wanting to switch sectors, wanting to switch jobs and do something different?
I would not advise that. Being in the market today, I don't think for job seekers, for employees, it's the best time to switch because one, it's obviously not the best time to negotiate the best pay package. Secondly, the way the industry and overall business outlook is going for companies, you don't know how a company will perform 6 months to a year down the line. So if you're making a switch, unless it's for very clear reasons that you can get a great pay package out or certain other variables or a relocation or a all of those personal reasons. From a career perspective, yes, if you have your dream company offer in front of you, yes, but otherwise I would not say so. I would not advise that. I think for a lot of at any level, it would be good to wait and watch for at least up to second quarter of this year to decide that is this the career, is this the company that I want to grow with? Because now longevity and tenure are also something that companies are really looking for in today's day, which is so rare. So I think it would be smart to wait out some more months.
All right. On that note, we'll have to wrap up at least the first half of this discussion. Sangeeta, Shiv and Amrish, many thanks for joining us with your views. Clearly, the hope at least is that the tide will turn in 2013 and job seekers will have much more to cheer about in the year to come. But will the auto sector have so much to look forward to? And can we hope for a revival in Motown? That's the debate coming up after a short break.